Whoa. Whoa. Black is back. Black is back. Black is back. Africa out of Africa. 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 Obama. Yes, imperialism out of Africa. It doesn't matter if it looks like Obama. Out of Africa. We don't want imperialism in any form in Africa. First of all, I'd just like to thank you, the chairman, for the brilliant presentation he made. It was just brilliant. Don't you think so? Yes. So, as usual, when the chairman speaks, it helps everyone. So, my speech, is sorted out. And I also like to thank you, Black's Back, for organizing, these powerful events. This is a unique event for everyone who is watching us on the internet around the world. There is nothing like this, where the question of war against Africa is put on a world stage and is not dominated, is not sponsored by opportunities of white left or any kind of liberals that you may find in the United States or throughout Europe. So this is independent, self-determination event. So I just say thank you for that. And a lot of times when we see Africa, people just say, oh, what's about Africa, There is no rationale to explain what's going on. And most of the time, in the mind of the oppressors, and in the mind of the oppressed also, there is some kind of understanding that there is no goods coming out of Africa. Anyone who does anything out of Africa is out of a generosity, to feel good about yourself, and also, make give some Africans some chance, to get on with life. But, we are involved in a mobilization for self-determination. And one aspect of the work for Black is Back is to bring the truth to the people. Because every time we listen to the news, we're just listening to the liars. Because imperialism or Western society, capitalism, is based on telling lies. Everything they do, they have to tell lies because they cannot stand the truth. And I'm saying that for a simple reason that Africa is a phenomenal place. Yeah. Just think about it, where humanity started. Yeah. Tell me, what kind of place could that be where humanity began, where you and I, have our origin? Just think about it. Think about, we talk about civilization. We talk about writing. You can't have a civilization without writing. And writing began in Africa. Don't listen to the lies that always try to make Egypt and Mesopotamia start at the same time. That's a lie. It took some 70,000 years before Christ, basically, to have the civilization of Egypt to emerge as we know it. Forget about the Greek civilization, because as you know, the Greek civilization or the Greek alphabet is not even the Greek alphabet. Alpha, the beta, the omega has nothing to do with Greek language. If you learn the Greek language, if you spoke it, alpha, beta, gamma, all that are not Greek. They're foreigner to Greek language. That's a profound statement. Paper. From papyrus. That's from Africa. So you remove papyrus, remove the alphabet from Africa, what do you have? You have to explain why the center of a Greek civilization was in Egypt, was in Alexandria, Hellenistic civilization. And I'm saying this because for Africans who are listening, because for their mind of the oppressed have to be free. That's really important to us. We have to understand that Europe just came to farming recently. So when you talk about the food, the cucumber, all these, vegetable, the Africans domesticate all that. So when you look at Africa, you're not looking at just any place. You're looking at a phenomenal place. That's the beginning of a civilization. Not just in terms of human beings, but what we call civilization. That's really important. Now, why we need to support Black is Back? One thing is that the chairman just said that the United States and imperialism in general are in a state of permanent war. And when you see how this capitalism began, it began by stealing Africans. That's war. Because remember, for every African that left Africa, he left his wife in Africa, or the wife left her husband in Africa, or someone left his children in Africa, his nieces, his grandparents, uncles, all that. That was war, because you cannot separate a husband from his loving wife without war. You cannot do that. So you have war from the beginning. That's what war. And slavery itself is a form of war. Colonialism is a form of war. It's an economy of war. So from the very beginning up to present day, you're dealing with an economy of war all the time. It's not just the manufacturing of weapons and stuff like that, but the entire edifice, the entire economy requires wars all the time. That's what the system we're dealing with is all about. Now, if you look at Africa today, what you will see, every day, at least 400 million Africans go hungry. Every day, at least. In the places like the Congo, you have at least 3/4 of the population don't have access to drinking water. But this is a place full of water, rivers, everything like that. You talk about malaria, for example, you have at least 1 million people dying from malaria every day. At least 1 million. And more than half of those who are dying from malaria are children. That's war. That's war. When you have most of the people in Africa don't have access to food, don't have access to hospitals, just basic health care, don't have access to school, stuff like that, you're talking of war. So war is not just when the armies are dropping bombs, stuff like that. When you're dying from hunger and you're sick and you know you will die because you don't have money to pay the doctors. And families, they know their loved ones are going to die because they know they can't afford to take the loved one to hospital. And that's what something you see throughout Africa. Wherever you go, from South Africa to North Africa, you see people suffering, catching hell in every serious way. That's what imperialism has imposed on us as a result, as a condition of having access to our resources. They don't just go and say, we're going to trade with you. There's no trade. They go and loot and kill, and impose all these conditions of existence to the people. And that's what you see every day. And we talk about the situation of wars as people understand it. You have heard about war in Sudan. You heard about war in the Congo. You heard about war in Angola. You heard about war in Algeria, war in Mozambique. And you can name all these places. Imperialism has involved for sometimes now in Africa in wars to reverse the gains made through the struggles for independence. You all know the greatest struggles of the 60s. And the response of the United States was what? Is to impose wars in all those places where they saw the emergence of a powerful national liberation movement. When they were not able to control those national movements, they imposed war on the people. And one example is the Congo itself. You all remember the great Patrice Lumumba? Yeah. What was the results? What was the response to the United States? It was murder of Patrice Lumumba, murder of all the leaders around Patrice Lumumba, but also an imposition of war on the Congo. And we have a situation where at least 1 million people were killed just in the process to impose what they call peace, where we are not able to fight back anymore. 1 million people. And they film it. There are footages now on the internet where you can see what they say mob out. They will go on houses after houses, and the children, they'll be hidden in the house, they'll throw grenades, and anyone who try to run away, then shoot them. They did that for days in the Congo, in the heartlands of Patrice Lumumba, because they said anyone who's from the age of 7 years old is Lumumba's, so you should go deal with them. So they killed and they killed and killed. That's how it was. When the peace movements here talks about war, they're not talking about the war that's taking place in Africa, generally speaking. I never seen a sustained anti-war movement in Europe, in England, where I am, to stop the war taking place against Africa. I never seen that. I never heard of any massive mobilization against war, against wars taking place in the Congo. I never seen that. I never seen anything like that. But you have a situation where at least 5 million people are dead. And every day in the Congo, at least 2,000 people die as a result of the imposition of war. Because you got to see, the war that has been imposed in the Congo has been imposed on the condition of genocide. I'm not just talking about the war where you get the guns, all that. But the people who are suffering from war have no access to health care whatsoever. So when they run away from the war, where do they go? They go in the bushes, but when you go in the bushes, you don't have access to basic food, like basic clean water, stuff like that. And the people die as a result of running away from war. People die as a result of being put in the concentration camps. Because in any given time, when you go to places like Congo and Sudan, you have millions and millions of Africans in what they call refugee camps or internally displaced camps, which are nothing but concentration camps. You remember the cholera that's killing Africans in Haiti? Yeah. That's how it works, because you cannot live in a concentration camps. There are no sanitation, there are nothing, no clean water, no healthcare, nothing. So people are concentrated, just part like animals, because that's a way also of killing people. We first saying that there is war, because you just run away from war. Now you're safe, you are in the refugee camps. But refugee camps themselves are death camps. Death camps. And you will see many people dying just as a result of being in those death camps. And the war in Africa, it's not just war where they drop bombs, as I'm saying. It's also war to break the spirit. Let's break the spirit, to break the resistance, the will to resist. You should see how they do it in the Congo. You have rape, collective rapes, where they gather the community. You're going to watch, surrounded by soldiers. And they not only soldiers, they rape the women in front of everybody, and the husband and the children have to watch. You don't watch, they kill you in front of everybody. Then they will get the young to rape the older women. And you know something about African culture? A younger person cannot see a naked body of an adult because they believe you will be cursed. Now you get a young people to do that in the front of everybody. So you're destroying psychologically not just that person and that woman, also the entire community. This is not a one-off. This planned, organized. That's what they teach them in the School of America, so those kind of places. That's strategy for warfare, how you destroy the community spirit to resist. So no one wants to talk to anybody. Everyone wants to be by themselves or run away. You know, men just leave the families, they go somewhere else because they can't deal with what they just witnessed. And this has been going on for years and years and years. That's what's going on right now as we're talking in the Congo. You get our children, you give them guns. They are what, 11, they are 10, they are 12. As a condition to give them those guns, they have to kill. We go friends. We go to the armies. They tell us what they did. They explain that you have to kill 50 when we go to those places. You kill 100, and they have to justify those killings. So you remember King Leopold II, when they built their army, that for every bullet you use, you must justify the use of that bullet. So the soldiers will bring back hands, penises, stuff like that to justify. That's what they did. It has no change, the same thing. Those young men have to justify what they're doing. So you have the break up of social fabrics as we're talking right now, because this will make it difficult for people to come together and organize and fight back. That's what basically it's happening now. And that war you see, and then when you watch the TV and we are told what? We are told is tribal wars, is ethnic wars. There are no ethnic wars like that in Africa. All the wars in Africa are imperialist wars. All of them, imperialist wars, because they are wars to bring the loots, to bring the gold, to bring the content. Like everybody was using a mobile phone, everybody was using a cell phone, everybody was using Nintendos, you name it. All these things have loots, raw material coming from Africa, in particular coming from the Congo where the war has been taking place. Because you cannot have those stuff without a content that is the best material to control the heat in the computers, on your cell phone. That's the best material to build those capacitors that control, the heat. And that's how they having access to those materials in Africa. It's not paid for. Nothing has changed. African labor, not paid for. African resources, not paid for. You can go in the Congo and you will not find an evidence of the resources that are coming from those raw materials. Because the way they have organized the looting there, they have all these armies that are backed by neocon governments in the region and themselves backed by the United States. They loot the place and all the materials being sold to intermediate enterprises, so it makes it difficult to track back where the stuff is coming from. Because if you go to cell phone companies here, they will say they bought the stuff legally. But they have in-between companies that are set up. And those in-between companies, they're the ones who go straight to the rebel areas and buy the stuff and then export it. So the national government doesn't have any record or stuff like that, or even ability to control anything, because that's the strategy of imperialism. Just keep the war going on, and the war allows imperialism to have access to all these resources and bring them out. And this way, then you can say, you can justify it's a tribal war, it's ethnic war, because the only thing now you can see, you can give as a rationale to the world who's watching to say is the people, the Tutsi versus this, or this tribe that against this tribe this. But there's nothing like that. What you see is imperialist war, manifesting itself in terms of neocolonial war. You have the African bourgeoisie who have accepted the mission of imperialism. The mission of imperialism, which is is to loot Africa, to kill Africans, get our labor for free, get our resources for free, and the African petty bourgeoisie has accepted that. They see this as the only way for them to achieve their own personal ambitions, which is to be just like white rulers or white people in general. So they have accepted that. But we are the African internationalists. We are just coming the opposite direction. Our mission is to free Africa, is to unite Africa. And we believe in a very serious way that all our problems have to be solved as one people. And a part of our efforts to build this anti-war movement is to win Africa to the African consciousness. By that we mean that we cannot have an anti-war movement just for Haiti, for example. Or we cannot have an anti-war movement just for Congo. Or we can have a national application of that, but it has first to be a unified anti-war movement to end all wars against Africa and the black people everywhere. That's the starting point. That's where we are. Because remember, our history is very clear. We are in this situation, we are in this mess, because when Europe began attacking Africa 30 or 40 years before Christopher Columbus got here, because the kidnapping of Africans was taking place already, Europe has already captured part of Africa, North Africa, and coming down south before Christopher Columbus got to America, 30 or 40 years before. And our response from then was individualized response. People in West Coast Africa, this part, they will fight against the Danish, against the Flemish, against the English, against whoever was coming from Europe. It was always individualized response. And this is something we have suffered from in the last 500 years. So when we say we're going to overturn the verdict of imperialism, first we have to rectify our own weakness, which is individualized response to attacks coming up on us. So we have to have a unified response to everything we do. And then we can have a nationalized, a localized response as a part of a unified approach. And this is feasible and it's easy even in time of electronics. Garvey tried to do it. You know what Garvey achieved? So now we can do even better than Garvey tried to do because we have the lessons of Garvey and we have the technology in our favor. So unified approach is really, really fundamental that we put this on the ground. And what we want to do is we have some clear proposals. We see this mobilization as part of the offensive of the oppressed to retake control of our lives. You watch the TV, the mobilization in Egypt. This part of mobilization you saw in Egypt too. Because we are doing it in a different condition because the Africans are here all over the place in Americas and Africa as fragmented, dispersed nation. So our response will have its own particularity, which is that, we find ourselves in this room. So we want to do, we want to use these events to mobilize further, mobilization basically, to build the movements against the war. So I would like to put the first resolution to this, assembly, that you support the resolution that the LD this year be used as another platform for the Black is Back, basically to mobilize further, to build an anti-war movement against African people around the world. That will be the first one. And the second one is in August, that on the 20th, that will be Saturday, that we do an international day of action against imperialist war on Africa and African people worldwide. And that will give opportunity to all Africans around the world to come together. Because one condition for our victory is to unify the consciousness of the Africans. In the mind of African people, we have to see ourselves as 1 billion people strong, moving in the same direction, which is the liberation and the unification of our homeland, which is Africa. Because remember, Africa is your homeland, it's our homeland. That's a right you cannot give away, and you never give it away anyway, because there is no one who can say anything like that. So that's the two proposals I would like to put on the floor here for us to take further. And another thing I would like to mention is the question of the UN and the struggle for reparation and the question of ICC. You all know they are international criminal courts. We should be the one, putting imperialism and the leaders to our own courts. But imperialism knows something about history. They anticipate that the world, the Africans, if Africans have to achieve justice, social justice, we will have to put imperialism in our own courts. Because imperialism has to be killed by the African revolution. We will be the one who put imperialism in the coffin. We are the one who invented the coffin, but now we can see why we invented the coffin, because we're going to put imperialism in that coffin. So we want to build our own institution, our own courts. Because imperialism right now are on some kind of a counter-offensive to confuse the people, also to intimidate further the African bourgeoisie so they can comply even more. Because every Negro who is in power in Africa is scared that their bosses will put them in courts. Because they know what they did, imperialism allowed them to do what they did. So they know all that. So we're saying we have to build our own tribunal where we will put imperialism on trial so they can stay in trial under the leadership of the African working class. Just quickly about the UN. The UN is institutions being used more and more by imperialism to advance their cause, not just with the bombing of Libya. As you can see, imperialism never fought a just war. Imperialism cannot fight a just war because imperialism means genocide for Africans and all the colonized people around the world. There is no ground whatsoever for imperialism to claim any kind of just war, but the UN gave them a mandate because they control the UN and they give themselves a mandate. So, you know, here you are. You have UN force in the Congo, about some 20,000 troops. You have UN force in Ivory Coast, about 8,000 troops. You have UN force in Sudan. You have UN forces in Haiti. So you can see the UN, whenever imperialism cannot act unilaterally, just like the United States cannot go there by himself, they always comes to a collective understanding that the UN can do the work for them. So we need to have our own international, which means that we need to win all the revolutionaries around the world, all honest, genuine revolutionaries, to build our own international, which is going to be made of an African Socialist International and all honest, serious revolutionaries from Latin America, from the Middle East, from anywhere else, to replace the UN as a really global world organization of the people. Because the UN is not an institution of the people. That's an imperialist institution. So I know my time's up. I just want to say once more, I'm really glad and honored to be here, to be part of history, and participate in this magnificent struggle to kill imperialism. Uhuru.